On this episode of Collect Your Thoughts, we are diving to our very first Collect Your Thoughts book club pick, I Don't Believe in Astrology, A Therapist's Guide to the Life-Changing Wisdom of the Stars by Deborah Silverman. This book has a lot of information, and boy, did we collect our thoughts on it.
We are going to talk about how astrology is so much more than just your sun sign, how to begin understanding your birth chart, and how to combat the evil gremlins of your mind through learning how to use astrology as a tool for enlightenment and peace.
We have a lot to cover, Asher, so let's head for the stars and get started. Welcome to Collect Your Thoughts. I'm Sean Millhouse, licensed professional counselor.
I'm Asher Morgan, licensed professional counselor.
That's right. Asher's back, everybody. Woo, 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 woo. Yes, Asher was the one that initially brought up the idea of doing a book club. And then I was like, Asher, I really want to do this book, which was not the original idea that Asher wanted for the book club. Asher, do you want to maybe share what your original intentions were and how I basically,
Poached that.
I poached it.
Yeah. I do read a lot of nonfiction, but I think it was more about taking a popular fiction book and looking at the different mental health or psychological themes that presented through it and just kind of having some fun with like breaking it down, analyzing it from a therapist's perspective of what we thought was going on.
Yeah.
There. And then you came back at me with this.
With this being I Don't Believe in Astrology, A Therapist's Guide to the Life-Changing Wisdom of the Stars by Deborah Silverman. When we came to why did I want to pick this? Well, two reasons. One, I typically have a really hard time with making myself read books that are therapy related, nonfiction, because it feels like school again. Even though I enjoy learning about it, I typically get very like, oh, I just wish this was something else. But I also really love astrology. And I love that this book, which came across my Instagram feed out of nowhere, algorithm was doing its work, showed me like this book that was written by a therapist about astrology, which I thought, oh my gosh, I can unite two of the things that I really love. And also, Asher, you do love astrology as well. You get into it.
I do. I find it really fascinating, and I'm always looking for, I don't know, answers that are maybe like bigger than myself and bigger than just societal norms for kind of why we do the things we do, why we are the way that we are. And, astrology's been around for forever.
Forever.
When you presented this to me, I was kind of like, but also, like, after I looked into it a little bit, that she is a therapist and figuring out, like, I also like bringing in kind of sometimes non-traditional modalities into the therapy space.
Yeah.
And I do have, some people that are into astrology, and it was kind of like, okay, let's get into this and see what her take is on it and how maybe we can blend those two in the therapy room. And I also like the fact that it was kind of posed as for skeptics. Not that I am that much of an astrology skeptic, but
that it was keeping that in mind, that it was saying you may pick this up because you're a skeptic, and here are my reasons why I want to maybe have you change your mind.
Yeah, and why we want to think about it.
I thought we would start with first talking a little bit about the author, breaking down the book, and then after we go over the majority of what the book is about and the important things that we want to share, then we'll basically do our analysis of what we think and what we saw and what we liked, what we didn't like, and maybe how we might use this in our work if we choose to. So how's that sound?
Lovely.
Awesome. First things first, I'm going to talk about Deborah Silverman. This was her bio taken straight from the jacket of the book. Over the past 40 years working as a professional in private practice, Deborah Silverman has specialized in helping thousands of individuals achieve emotional health and wisdom based on their astrological chart. While there is no one-size-fits-all approach, Deborah has developed a unique psychological spiritual model combining her expertise in esoteric, which she says in parentheses, soul centered astrology, with her extensive education in psychology to help those going through major life changes, especially in crisis. She custom designs her therapeutic approach to each individual using astrology and psychology as a magical healing combination. Thousands of students have attended courses, seminars, and training through her online school, Deborah Silverman Astrology. Her goal is to connect with you on a deeper level and help you heal while making you laugh and encouraging you to accept yourself just as you are. Pretty solid bio. And I would say, I don't know, from my opinion, I think she does a pretty good job of finding that middle in terms of the way that the book is written and shared. What do you think?
Mhm. I would agree with that. And I mean, I think a lot of the bio is also, I think, how I approach the therapy space.
Hmm.
And especially that last line, like helping you connect with yourself on a deeper level. We're going to laugh, maybe cry, and just helping you accept who you are. Like that's a huge part of how I approach the counseling space and my own personal counseling journey
Yeah.
is just finding that personal acceptance for like who we are, why we do the things that we do without judgment. And I really love that the book is kind of framed of like, here's some answers, here's some
Yeah.
insights into, I like insights more than answers because it doesn't all fit all the
Yes.
time, but like some
Right.
insight into why you do things the way that you do them and, or
Hmm.
why you don't do, like maybe where you get in the way of
Yeah.
yourself. So,
Yeah.
which is a huge reason why people come to counseling is like, I don't want to be doing these things, but I continue to do them.
And I think too, what I've seen in lots of different news pieces, as well as what shows up in my therapy office, is a lot of people are turning to astrology. I think it's been something that, as an elder millennial, as I like to say,
Same.
I really remember, like, in the newspaper, they always had the astrology every day, and my mom would be like, "Oh, yeah, you're a Leo, and, this is kind of a fun little thing to read," and so I just thought it was really cool. I'm like, "Wow, this is, like, telling me how today's gonna go. Wow, that's so amazing." But also, it is showing, and I don't know if that was something that was also important, but that organized religion is decreasing
Mhm,
exponentially and especially with younger generations.
mhm,
And people are turning to the stars with a hope that it's something that doesn't feel judgmental. It doesn't feel like it's telling you something in a way that is condemning or reinforcing that if you don't do this, you're going to hell, any of those fun
mhm.
things.
Yeah.
And it really feels like guidance.
Mhm.
And then I see it in the room when I have clients go, "I'm a typical Aquarius," or, "Oh, and I have Sagittarius moon," or whatever. It's really interesting to see how people relate to it or not. And I think after reading this book, if anyone chooses to do so, or just from listening to this podcast, there's definitely potential to relate even more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I view it as like it's just another tool. I'll probably say that repeatedly today. But I also really like the way it's framed because sometimes with religion and other things, it's like this is the only way. And one thing that with astrology and that she kind of emphasized, and she did pose it, which I know we'll get to, as like actually focus on these things. Cause like we tend to just focus on like you're a Leo, I'm a Cancer. It's like
Hmm.
here's our horoscope for today. Like but that doesn't always fit for everybody, and she
Yeah.
poses some perspective on looking at the other parts of your chart, which we don't always do. And I think you had a better understanding of how this all kind of fits together because I texted you yesterday and was like, "I don't understand how these pieces all fit together." But looking at those other parts of you and trying to figure out, like, kinda how they dance together to make
Hmm.
up the whole of you. And it's
Hmm.
like some parts of it as standalone, like, may not resonate,
Yeah.
but then when you start trying to figure out all the nuance of it and how they work together, and I think she actually does a good job of saying that, of like, not everybody actually like resonates with their quote unquote sun sign or their zodiac, like
And it
their
might be
main
for a good
one.
reason depending on their placements.
Correct. But we don't typically push past like, oh, you're a Cancer. And so what else does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a big one is I think if you learn anything from this, your sun sign, which is the astrological sign that you probably have heard that's what you are the most,
Mhm.
is it's an important, but definitely an incomplete piece of that entire puzzle. It's not the whole shebang. In fact, it's far from it. So let's get into the thick of it all. All right. We have the author's purpose in writing this book. And I want to pull some quotes that I think did a good job of articulating what she was trying to get across. One quote I have is, think about it. You don't have to believe in something for it to work. I'll bet you believe in true love, even if it has disappointed you at times. You believe in gravity, even though you might not understand it. You trust the lights will come on when you flick the switch without being able to explain it. Belief and understanding are not required for love or gravity or electricity to do their thing. So, on a very basic level, I appreciate basically being like, have a little faith in this. Maybe
Mhm.
put a little stock into this, even if you're not sure why you should.
People are either, like, really into it, or it's like, "Oh, I know what my sign is, but, I'm not that into it," or even just even more extreme of that of, like, that's just hooey and, like, nobody believes in that, why are you believing in that? And just a little bit of skepticism of, like,
Yeah.
we believe in things all the time without being able to, like, tangibly see them or have, like, physical hard evidence of them, and this is just another one of those things, I think.
A few other quotes I thought were helpful is, guess what else? The things you think are wrong with you are your strengths. This is the ultimate truth about astrology. It changes what you thought was wrong.
Mhm.
And it really does help to see that. Like you could still be like, damn, I still think these parts of me are fucked up. But the way that this book repositions the why and the how you learn and work with those things really helped me feel maybe less shame about
Mhm.
some of those things, as if, "Oh, okay, this is just my journey. It's not some fatal flaw." What about
Right.
you? What did you think about that?
Yeah, I really liked it, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but I love the way that, like, each were framed, like, each sign, regardless of where they were framed with a high road and a low road of, like,
Yes.
this is what this looks like, when and a lot of it I interpreted as, like, when you're basically just being true to yourself, and so when you're not being true to yourself and kinda honoring what your, like, values, morals, ethics, however you want to label it, are for you, then it may look a little bit like this. And then if you are honoring those parts of you, even if they're parts that you've struggled with or have historically had to work on or don't like or have gotten negative feedback about, but you're still staying true to them anyway, then this is what this can potentially look like for you. A lot of it is just, are you willing to kind of look at these things about yourself and work on acceptance, which is something I work with my clients on all the time. One of my like go-to phrases is like, this thing doesn't have moral value. Like, you're putting moral
Mm,
value on it. It's not good or bad, it's just what it is. And I think that's what this is for me, of like how we treat ourselves. We're the ones that put that value on that of like, oh, I'm being so hard on myself. I do it all the time. Of like,
yeah,
like these things are bad. When in reality, I'm the one assigning that value. And it's just kind of what it is. And if
yeah.
I get curious about it and where it's coming from, and I think this is an avenue to do that, why we do the things that we do.
This book is under 300 pages, but it is dense with information. There's a
Yeah.
lot in there in every single chapter that was helpful, interesting, and definitely informative. Another great quote is, this is a psychology of you book, utilizing astrology as the guiding light, the framework. The signs are a way to talk about your idiosyncrasies and show you that you don't have to feel bad about your so called faults. The function of this book is to give you access to the voice of compassion that knows you are okay, lovable, and a beautiful soul. Which I
Mhm.
thought, like, what a great mission statement. The book from there is broken down into two parts. Part one is called Psychological Astrology and the Nature of the Unconscious Mind. And part two is Understanding Yourself and Others. So essentially, part one is all about breaking down a lot of the general terms and knowledge about how this all works, versus part two is breaking down each and every sign and various aspects of the sign, including what certain placements mean for that sign, and really going into pretty great detail for each one, which is really awesome. We'll begin with part one with the psychological astrology and the nature of the unconscious mind. And the first chapter in this is called Falling in Love with Your Fate. Essentially, what made her even go into astrology in the first place, Silverman, was she asked in a class, "Why don't we as humans do what will make us happy?"
Yep.
And, parts of what she describes as examples of the human condition and its faulty design, just the way that we come into this world without anything, is that peace often eludes us. Forgiveness doesn't come organically. Blame and shame do. We are
Mhm.
pathologically insecure. We learn the hard way. We prioritize instant gratification. We resist change. We have triggers, which I mean, I was like, damn, okay,
I
okay,
mean, I
you
feel
got
like
me.
that's like if you summed it up, because trauma can definitely be woven into each of those things. That's why people show up in our office. I love that whole notion of like that she went into the field of psychology because she wanted to know why we knowingly like do things that are not good for us and trying to unpack that. We know that this thing's not gonna serve us or make us feel good or whatever, but yet we do it anyway.
But that's where she found in astrology a rootedness that maybe she didn't feel like she could find just through psychology alone.
Mhm.
And that really then helped her, I think, find ways to meet people in a way that was both saying, here is what this says about you potentially, and also here is what you can do with that information that might be your lifelong journey, your lesson to be learned.
Mhm.
A couple of other great quotes from this chapter that I wanted to share. So one is, that idea that you shouldn't take anything personally? Bullshit. Everyone does. An air sign will push feelings away entirely and replace them with denial. She'll say, I don't even care. Or perhaps you act out with destructive behavior, typical of the fire sign, that for a moment soothes the pain, like spending money or escaping with the help of drugs and or alcohol. Maybe you stonewall like an earth sign or break down in tears like a water sign. We are
Mm.
built to be triggered rather than built for wisdom. And I was like, damn.
Right. Called out.
Called out. Yeah. I was like, how dare you say that I sometimes do destructive things when I'm angry? It was
Mhm.
like, oh, like spending money. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
My
rough.
emotions.
Yeah. And then, as she also said, it's like the game show Jeopardy. You get the answer reflected by your life's drama. The question is, what does life want me to learn? And I
Mhm.
think that really spoke to me because I like themes. I like an overarching concept of what our goal is here in life because
Mhm.
I think while zooming into your day to day and what you do absolutely is crucial, I think sometimes it feels like, what is the point? What is my journey for on
Mhm.
this big blue beautiful marble? Sorry, that was so
Just this
stupid.
like giant speck of dust that's hurtling through space and time.
Yeah, yeah, it's just kinda like, what do you do with all that? And that's what astrology is trying to say is, "Hey, here's what you gotta do." She also writes, "The ultimate challenge is to accept exactly what's been handed to you with gratitude. Understanding and acceptance arrive upon realizing that 1, we're all in this together, and 2, every single person you know, bar none, has secret issues and parts of themselves they really don't like. Acceptance arrives when there's no longer resistance to your particular life situation. That's when the healing begins,
Mhm.
which is like therapy 101.
Well, and I just love that concept because a lot of what I mean, I see it in my own life, I see it with my friends, I see it in the therapy space of we get frustrated when others expect us to stay the same and like can cause a lot of relationship distress when it's like one person maybe is outgrowing another, or we're growing at different rates,
Mhm.
and that can be based on a lot of factors, just personal journey, trauma, just whatever's going on in your life right now. But that whole like thought that we're supposed to be static, sometimes it just like it kind of grates on me of like, I'm glad I'm not the same person I was like 5 years ago.
Yes. Oh God.
Um, and I hope I'm not the same person in 5 years or even 5 months that I am right now. And I think this is kind of a cool format that kind of lays out like what the challenges are and how much you wanna invest in it, as a tool in that toolbox, like kind of a guide, like almost like a map of your own like evolution and how it shows up.
Yeah. So the last quote that I really want to share that I think encapsulates the message here is falling in love with your fate is the only way out. This is the purpose of life. Pretend this is your job description and you can't wait to go to work. The whole focus will change. Which I was like, damn, that's hard because sometimes I really fucking hate life.
Mhm.
But choosing to see it as this is my job and I am going to do what I can to be as enthusiastic in the pursuit of this work will change my life. And that's really hard to embrace.
We fight against stuff so often, and usually the relief comes when we figure out how to let go and just accept. Like,
Surrender.
even yes, essentially, like, even if it's really difficult or it's hard or it hurts, like, we fight so hard to not feel those things, and even sometimes, like, criticize or demonize when we're in a bad place,
Hmm.
instead of just realizing, just kinda breathe through it. I feel like I'm channeling Jason a little bit of, like, getting curious about it. I've said that a
Yeah.
lot today in sessions of, like, let's get curious about that. But, like, kinda figuring out what it is, like, what hurts, what feels like we're rubbing up against sandpaper, and how do we accept that so that then we can actually do something about it?
So now we move to astrology through the lens of psychology. And one of the first things that she writes is your ego, which is represented by your sun sign, your soul, which is expressed through your rising sign, and your life lessons are described by your Saturn placement. So then going over that a little more deeply, the ego is personality and is represented by your sun sign, is how you show up in the world. Your ego decides your preferences and opinions. It likes mustard and hates mayonnaise. It wants your hair cut a certain way, has opinions about people, and chooses a particular pair of shoes. It gets easily offended, loves praise, and prefers some people to others. If your ego isn't healthy, if you don't have self esteem or dear boundaries, you will lose yourself. No one tells you how important your ego is. Ego has a negative connotation, yet it is the primary impulse that makes you you. So then we move on to the soul. Your soul is the part of you that is open to every and any experience, no demands. It's not biased, healthy, sick, tall, short, fit, out of shape, young, old. The soul loves you just the way you are. It's not looking to feed your ego or pacify your emotions. It simply longs to be in the glorious fulfillment of being alive. It doesn't even care whether you are a success or a failure. That's the ego's language. The soul is a slut. It will do anything at
I
any
love
time for
that.
anyone just to get a lesson, just to learn something new in order to live this life with full conviction. Your soul is fully committed to life no matter what's involved. Which I remember reading that, I was like, oh, did she just say the soul's a slut?
Yes.
I was like,
We're
damn.
we're reclaiming it.
That's right. That's right. No slut shaming here, damn it.
Nope.
She then goes on to talk about how Saturn represents your life lessons. She says, you probably won't want to learn them. Whenever I teach Saturn in my school, everyone says, I hate that part of me, no matter
Mhm.
what sign it's in. These are your lessons, nevertheless. Saturn is like the stern high school principal who insists you follow the rules or you won't graduate. Where Saturn was at your time of birth determines what lessons you came here to learn. This is definitely one of the biggest things I didn't realize the power of was
Mhm.
Saturn. Like
Yeah,
I
me either.
didn't ever know obviously I know that there's planets and in our charts and blah blah blah, but I didn't realize how important it was. What about you?
No, completely. Like for me, my focus has always been on like my sun sign, which is like the main zodiac, and then my rising. Um, and but even this, she takes rising to a whole nother level
Yeah.
that I hadn't considered, and
Yeah.
how they kind of dance together.
Asher, I always have to give it to you. You frequently will be like, I feel so called out by fill in the blank. And this part really made me feel called out. So she writes, you can begin to understand how astrology informs psychology in your own life by finding the repetitive patterns. What are the bothersome themes that follow you around? What are the challenges that keep coming up for you that make you say, not this again? What is it you can't stop thinking about? What nibbles at you? What bump in the road can't you get over? Life is humbling. It brings us to our knees. Saturn happens to rule the knees. We're all struggling in one way or another, not equally, to be fair, yet struggling nonetheless to find our soul's healing balm. She ends this section of explaining this part of the book and saying, you have to go inside, sit down next to your unconscious impulses, name them, become friends with them, and invite them to come with you to the other side of the street, a street called Awareness Avenue. Wah, wah,
It's
wah.
giving Sesame Street vibes.
I was like, sunny days, Awareness Avenue. Oh, God. We're so deranged. Okay.
We are. Where's my
Okay.
trash can that I can go like dive into and be Oscar the Grouch?
I love it. I love it. So then we move into the chapter on the observer and the gremlins, which I think
Oof.
that this is definitely where the book really helps you go. This is why it's important to learn these things so that you
Mhm.
can do your due diligence in working with the gremlins, which we will define, that good old Deborah will give us the definition for.
Yes.
So she writes, if you can take just one practical application from this entire book, let it be the awareness of your observer. Everyone has an observer waiting in the wings. I call it the 13th sign, the nameless one. The observer is objective and has the power to step off the stage of your life and show you truth without judgment. It is a neutral mirror, the unbiased reporter. The observer merely tells what is.
Mhm.
Gremlins, on the other hand, are biased, critical, even mean voices in your head. They are anything but objective. The gremlins will criticize you all day long. If you burn the toast, the gremlins say, you idiot, can't you even make toast? The observer simply reports, the toast is burnt. No blame, no shame, no judgment, just the facts. It has no opinion, and it is the secret to your healing. She then goes on to say, without the observer, you are a victim to the whims of your ego and the drama therein. Because the observer is neutral, think of the observer as Switzerland, it can help you to remain calm when things go wrong. Human nature is so reactive. What the observer does is discharge and unplug the reactivity fueled by your ego and your emotional body. What is it that keeps us from activating the observer? Gremlins. They
Mhm.
know your weak spots and they aim directly at your vulnerabilities. They point fingers, insisting fault. Gremlins specialize in interrupting. They have no manners. They are a nuisance. Can you imagine if your default voice excluded gremlins and was filled with trust and wisdom? Sorry, that's not happening.
Mhm.
Design fault. Even when you're the most enlightened, heightened state of peace, without careful practice, gremlins, like termites, can eat away at the foundation of a healthy psyche. Here's the good news: the more experienced you are, the easier it is to turn on the observer.
And this just makes me think of all of like the gremlins come from our trauma, little t and big T traumas, and all of the systems that we have to navigate day to day and our like intersections of life and what life would be like kind of if those played well together or if we
Yeah.
didn't have those traumas. And it also reminds me of reparenting yourself, like learning to pay more attention to the observer than the gremlins. And it's a quote that's come up a lot for me in my sessions with clients lately of like, this
Mm.
wasn't your fault, but now it's your responsibility.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it's like all of these things and the fact that you have these gremlins are not your fault, but it is your responsibility now of like, are you just going to succumb to them and let them take over?
yeah.
Or are you going to kind of do the hard, sometimes and oftentimes painful work to basically tell them to fuck off and start to
Yeah.
pay more attention to this voice than all of those years
Yeah.
of other people and systems and things like that? And it's not easy work to do.
You nailed it on the head with it's not just the internal voices that maybe we do from observation in our unhealthy minds. It is the media, it's
Hmm.
our community, it's our family systems, it's our schools, like it's our job, it's our environment. All those things can then also give you gremlins if you don't know
Hmm.
how to have a great relationship with your observer self.
Hmm. And we don't teach that. Like, we don't,
No.
like, when just thinking about being a parent, both literally and then like now hypothetically with clients that are parents of like teach so many of them. And like I do feel like this is one of the areas where TikTok has been really helpful of like teaching like parents now. I have a few clients that are really, really good about like sitting their kids down that are little and being like, all right, what was actually going on? What are you feeling? Like,
Mm,
you're allowed to feel that, but you don't get to be a jerk and you don't get to be mean about it. You don't get to throw things. There are boundaries, but also creating that space of what's actually going on. Like, let's tune into your observer. Like, I wasn't taught that because my parents weren't taught that and their parents
yep.
weren't taught that.
Yep.
And breaking those generational cycles of we didn't learn how to do this is such hard work, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's impossible.
Correct.
Um, and I think we also get caught up in thinking like, oh, I do this work for 6 months and then I'm good for the rest of my life. Like this type of work of like challenging gremlins and paying attention to your observer, like mindfulness, like any type of therapy, like it's going to be lifelong.
Yep.
And I don't say that to be daunting.
No.
I just say that of like, it's kind of part of our path of just paying attention. And it's part of that growth of, who do you want to be? Where are you going? And then, within this framework right now of like, what's your high road and,
Yeah.
what are your life lessons
Yeah.
that you're kind of here to learn.
Ooh, that's actually a perfect segue to what I thought was one of the most helpful practical elements that she offers in this book, which is how to practice getting in touch with your observer when you are feeling the overwhelmedness
Mhm.
of the gremlins. I'm going to walk us through it. The first thing she says is put your hands over your heart and ask yourself, what am I feeling? You may feel nothing because you have shut off completely, or you may feel moody, or you may feel something stronger like anger, misery, or irritation. Just stop, pause, and feel it. Take your
Mhm.
time. Put your awareness on and tag the feelings. Know that you are allowed and entitled as a human to stay in your emotions. Ask yourself if you are indulging. If so, fine. You are allowed to indulge. Just notice. Just feel it, no matter how intense it is. When you've indulged long enough, you'll know. Say out loud, observer on. Ask yourself, what am I teaching myself right now? What am I supposed to be learning? Why does this keep happening? When you can set the emotion aside and really entertain these questions, you know you've turned on your observer. So, a few last things to wrap up this section is she says, spoiler alert, you can't just go straight to the spiritual without walking through the valley of your stories and your reactivity. You have to move through the pain body. The side effects of bypassing or avoiding the emotional body are the source of every war and divorce. If you are often in conflict, it may be because you don't know how to inquire, identify the emotion, and take a breath. All right, so then we finally get to the next chapter, which is how astrology works, elements, modes, and signs. And I'm just going to briefly go over this because a lot of this is information you can find anywhere, but the actual breaking down of it is a little more nuanced depending on the type of astrologer or astrology style, blah, 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 blah. So then we're going into the planets.
Mhm.
And when learning about the planets, this was something that really made it easier for me to understand. Like when I'm reading my horoscope and they're saying your blah blah sign is in Saturn, or Saturn is doing this, or Mercury, blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. What the fuck does that even mean? And so, what she does in this book is I think, does a great job of breaking down what this means and why it's important. And then first starts out with this quote that I wanted to share, which is there are three primary ingredients in astrology: the planets, the signs, and the houses. Think of the planet as what, the sign as how, and the house as where. And
Mhm.
I think that's when I get lost in this because it can get very like, wait, this is over this, which does this. Like it can feel very inception y.
Mhm.
Like where I'm like, wait, what layer am I in right now? When I can return to the planets are the what, the sign is the how, the house is the where, it really helps me better understand. So now we're going to move into talking about the planets. And what I really appreciate about this section is that Deborah Silverman is able to assign the roles of board members running your company to the signs. And so I'm going to go over those right now. So the first one, of course, is sun. And the sun represents ego and life force. And she basically says, this is the chairperson of the board. This is the head honcho of this board. The next one, moon, are talking about emotions and our internal world. And she attributes this to being a board member who's quietly monitoring the feel of the room. Mercury is all about thought process and communication. And Mercury is going to be one that's really important to understanding yourself and your sign that she brings up a lot. And she basically says that this position in your company is the board member that stands at the front of the room and essentially is the secretary of your meetings that's really trying to keep everything organized. The next one is Venus, which represents love and the things you value and adore. And I thought this one might be a little bit stretch, but she said that it is the HR director, which I understand. Basically, she's trying to make the connection that, HR at its best is trying to make sure everybody in the company feels satisfied and that the
Mhm.
values of that company are being held up and supported, including its employees. But,
Mhm.
that can be controversial depending on various elements.
It's
The next
giving
one.
Coldplay concert.
I was just thinking that, but I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it.
I'll do it.
You'll do it. Thanks, Ashley.
Yes.
Next is Mars. That planet represents male energy, will, and determination. And basically, this is the board member that finds it easy to take over, demanding, order, goal focus. Like, I feel like this is like stereotypical, like white man energy. Like that's how I view Mars at its worst, which, whatever. I'm sorry if I
Mhm.
offended anybody, but also not sorry. Our next sign, which I didn't realize how fun Jupiter was, but I shouldn't be surprised because I think just even saying the name Jupiter is kind of fun, is that Jupiter literally stands for fun, your favorite things, and joy. And she says that this is the part of your company of the one who gets everyone excited for the work retreat or holiday parties. Then we have Saturn, and Saturn is the teacher of your life lessons, the disciplinarian, and essentially karma. And she, I think, puts it well that this is the chief operating officer, the COO of your company. We then have Uranus, which is representing rebellion, weirdness, and genius. And this is essentially the oddball that's in the meeting who is probably presenting some radical ideas that may or may not go well with everybody. So then we have Neptune, and Neptune is looked upon as the dreamer, the inner mystic. And she says this is the creative director of your company. And then last but certainly not least, we have Pluto, who definitely still holds true and is still a planet. God damn it. And
Going strong.
Pluto represents the power of the unconscious mind and passion. And she says that this board member is the aloof and mysterious silent partner. There are all of these archetypes in a business, in a company, and
Mhm.
I've seen them all. And I was actually able to visualize each of these in different ways. And that really helped me better understand the planets. What was it like for you?
I was actually just sitting here giggling to myself, listening to you talk about like Uranus because it's my only Scorpio placement
Oh, huh.
of just like, we're just gonna bring complete chaos to this meeting. And I just thought it was funny. But
Yeah.
I don't know, I felt like mine were pretty on point with how I present in the world and in meetings that I've had to be in. But I also really liked that framework because whenever you think about a board, all of those archetypes have to exist for things to
Yep.
function well. Even the ones that are like playful or the ones that are a little bit more rebellious. You need all of those different voices at the table.
To make a company succeed.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just yes people.
Right, right. This then leads into the 12 houses, which this is where things can get a little confusing because each house is ruled by a sign. Essentially, what I tried to do when I was trying to understand how to conceptualize the houses is that the houses, like for example, the first house is ruled by Aries, and these are more qualities of those signs instead of only thinking of them as like this is your Aries sign. Like, it's not your sign, it's the house's sign.
Mhm.
So if there are 12 houses and each house has like a designated captain of that house, the signs for each one are as follows. So the first house is your house of self, the physical self, life force, ego, it's active. That's Aries. Second house is possession, money, grounded in heavy things, practicality, home, and comfort. That's ruled by Taurus. Third house is described as the marketer, communicator, trendsetter, fascinated and passionate about information. And that's ruled by Gemini. The fourth house is about family, traditions, ancestry, caretaking, and nostalgia. And this is ruled by Cancer. The fifth house talks about romance, art, drama, games, children, full of excitement and exuberance, which is ruled by Leo. The sixth house talks about health, service, details, numbers, and organization. That's ruled by Virgo. The seventh house is ruled by Libra, and that encapsulates harmonizing, partnering in relationships and beauty. The eighth house, which is ruled by Scorpio, really talks about change, transformation, birth, death, sex, and money. The house of things people don't want to talk about. The ninth house is ruled by Sagittarius, and that house is about life purpose, philosophy, rationality, and the search for truth. The 10th house, ruled by Capricorn, is all about social status, ambition, success, fame, careers, and achievement. The 11th house, ruled by Aquarius, is focused on community, future, friendship, activism, and humanity. And the 12th house, which is ruled by Pisces, is all about creativity, the unconscious, emotions, and what happens under the surface. To better understand this, I definitely recommend that if you are interested in this, you should look at your birth chart. And there's a very easy way to do this, and she details this in the book, is you go to astro.com and then you go to charts and calculations. And then from there, you will click on under charts, drawings, calculations. There's one called chart drawing ascendant. From there, it's going to have you put in the basic information it needs in order to show you where all of the planets were at the time of your birth. So it's going to ask for your date of birth, your time of birth, and your location at the time of your birth.
Mhm.
And it's really important to know the specifics of this because even X amount of minutes difference can change the placement of certain planets. So if you want it to be as accurate as possible, you really want to make sure that you are accurate in this.
A lot of the websites too, though, where you can get a free chart reading do have like a checkbox where if you don't
Yeah.
know, maybe you're adopted or in foster care, like, and you kind of grew up in that system and you don't have access to know, like, to be able to ask a parent or a grandparent, what time was I born? They usually have a checkbox that say, like, I don't know the exact time. So, and
Yeah, no, that's great.
they try to account for that as much as they can, but
Yeah, it
yeah.
doesn't impact every single placement if you don't
Mhm.
have your time of birth, but it definitely helps too, is
Yeah.
essentially the lesson. But Asher, I really appreciate you bringing up that point because, yeah, we don't want people to feel left out on this. Very recently, I actually heard about this part that she goes over in the book, which is stelliums. And what stellium is in your chart is when there are three or more planets in either the same sign or the same house, and that basically shows you what your life theme is. In doing this, I was able to see that I have a stellium of Scorpio, and Scorpio is all about the dark side of life and understanding and having comfort with talking about maybe taboo things such as death, sex, money, all those things. And while that can sound really dark, at the same time, when I heard that, I went, oh, I think this is why when I do my work with clients, the dark stuff doesn't phase me that much because
Mhm.
it's just a part of who I am. And I've always felt a deep comfort with thinking about these things for a lot of reasons, but also knowing that not everybody else can necessarily handle that or they get scared about even talking about that. And I
Mhm.
know from your experience, Asher, you have a stellium
I
or
do.
two.
Yeah, I do have 2. But I have a stellium in Cancer, but then I also have a stellium in Libra that is also, they're all in the 5th house.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's like those 2 kind of overlap. Like my Cancer stellium is broken up between the 1st and the 2nd house, but my Libra stellium is all in the 5th house. And
Which that's like a double stellium in itself.
yeah, and so I am a little extra if you haven't learned that about me. But
Yeah.
they do kind of overlap, which I find
Yeah.
interesting. And so it's like for the 5th house, it's like people with 3 or more planets in this house are here, it says like are here to truly embrace wonder and vitality of being alive in this body, in this time and on this planet. But part of being a Libra is like in love with life itself. I mean, I have some questions because sometimes I'm like, why am I here? And like I'm still really early on into figuring out how this Libra-ness blends with my very emo and my feelings, Cancer, where like sometimes I just hate everything.
Yeah.
And I just feel way too much all the time and I wish it would stop. But I do love the fact that like the Libra one is here to change kind of your way of thinking and being and challenging you to figure that out. And I think it makes a lot of sense as to how I've ended up on the life path that I am and now doing what I do because I am still kind of a baby therapist, like
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of
Oh,
things.
yeah.
But a lot of my life work has always been about like wanting to help people realize their potential and helping them figure out like what living their best life is. And knowing that I have those 2 things, then they overlap, it's like it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Even if in my own personal life, I'm very much like swimming in those Cancer waters where it's just like, give me all the like boohoo feelings all the time. But I want other people to love their life and to figure out what it means for them.
I will say this, what is really cool about actually reading about all of the signs and learning about the different planets and placements and everything is that it helps me understand people when I look at the combination of their elements. I've asked many of my loved ones over this last week to give me their information, and it's been really eye-opening. Lastly, before we jump into some of the sign stuff, is basically talking about her framework is that she is working from what is called esoteric astrology, which is really about the internal experience versus exoteric astrology, which is apparently what a lot of astrology uses, which is about really using external elements such as the money you make, the relationships you have, the accomplishments, things like that are how you read astrology. But esoteric astrology is about your internal experience of how basically your relationship with yourself and
Mhm,
how you use your soul and learn to rise up to the higher parts of yourself. If anything, I'm so much more drawn to that because I'm like, yeah, we can try to externally validate all day long, but that's like a fool's errand because we're never going to be fully satisfied if we put all of our hopes and dreams on an external factor as opposed to always having it with us inside every time.
mhm,
But that's a really hard lesson to learn. Now, she then really goes into really breaking down more about Saturn and how important Saturn is. She calls Saturn the enforcer and the taskmaster. The element of Saturn gives us a clue as to what you are here to learn in this lifetime. If Saturn is in water, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, you are here to learn how to feel your feelings, set boundaries, and be vulnerable. Saturn challenges you after your heart breaks to get up and try again, to not allow your emotional realm to freeze and turn to ice. Saturn asks you to regain your faith in love and people no matter what's happened to you. When Saturn is in air, which is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, relationships and communication are your lessons.
mhm.
Relationships may seem challenging and you may resist them or settle. Either you've had too few or too many, or your relationships have been dysfunctional. So your mind constantly judges who you're with or intellectualizes, justifying why you should leave. At
Yeah.
best, you are built for relationships, community, friendships, and relating to others. When Saturn is in an earth sign, which includes Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and basically it's saying that money, resources, or security might be your lesson. You had money and lost it, or you've never been financially secure enough and you deem yourself a failure. Heads up, the soul has no concern for money as the determinant of your success. The real question is, do you respect the physical realm? Do you care for your money? Do you care for your body? Do you care for this earth? Are you willing to accept what the world sees as a lowly job in order to bring security to your family and those who depend on you without complaining? Are you willing to be successful and acknowledge your abilities? Lastly, we have if Saturn's in fire, that includes the signs of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. You are here to be seen. Your temper is either subdued or out of control. Perhaps you were once shamed on stage, literally or metaphorically, or you have always been too afraid to take the spotlight. Your life lesson is to stand up and be noticed. Be bold. Say the things that aren't easy to say. If you left your passions behind because you didn't get the applause you expected, don't give up. Do what you do because you love it, not because you're seeking affirmation from the outer world. She basically wraps this up with saying the ultimate role of challenges and crises in this life, said esoteric psychology, is to create enough angst and enough pain for you to finally stop the bus, put your attention on your rising sign, and take it to the high road and find peace with exactly what is, which, super, super, super easy. She says the most important things to really do in your work is to first identify your life lesson by your Saturn. Next,
Mhm.
figure out the high road of your rising sign. And then finally, giving your life over to your soul and be prepared for miracles.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's where we get very new agey. Now, this is where we finally really get into the breakdown of all the signs, which we definitely, it's way too there's just too much information in all of them, but I will at least go over what I thought was cool is that each chapter she has a two-word saying that represents each one. For example, she says with Aries, it's I am, Taurus, I have, Gemini, I think, Cancer, I feel, Leo, I will, Virgo, I analyze, Libra, I thought this was good, we balance,
Mhm.
Scorpio, I desire. Sagittarius, I seek. Capricorn, I use, which I want to say I don't like the word of use because I think it has a bad connotation. So I definitely would suggest maybe I utilize as a better
Mhm.
way of looking at it, but that's just me. Then we have Aquarius with I know. And lastly, Pisces with I dream.
Mhm.
And what's exciting about how she breaks it all down is she first in each chapter goes over speaking as if she is that sign and giving this really like kind of an essay on this is what it's like to be me, a Virgo. This is what it's like to be me, an Aquarius, blah, blah, blah. And then further and further goes into a lot of the hallmarks of each sign, talking about the high road of the sign, the low road of the sign, how you know you're in your observer self, and then also breaking into what it looks like when certain signs are in Mercury, your rising sign, or also Saturn. And really giving you a really thorough breakdown of if these are elements in your birth chart, these are your lessons. These are the things that you need to take hold of to better understand your big picture. So if you do read this book, you're going to want to really flag each of the different chapters that have your placements in your birth chart because it is like a puzzle that you are sort of
Mhm.
putting together almost like a serial killer letter,
Mhm.
cutting out all the different pieces and putting it on one page. That's kind of what this felt like for me. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I would agree. And like, cause I was just flipping through and like, I really also like that there's like a medicine
Yes.
for each sign, but I found it really funny because so I'm a Cancer sun, but a Gemini rising. And one of the things under medicine for Cancer is like mindfulness and like meditative practice. But then under Gemini, it's like you're gonna hate it. Like it's gonna feel like you're coming out of your skin. I have encountered a lot of criticism for the fact that my meditation practice, I usually don't sit
Mhm.
because I can't. Like, I
Yeah.
can't tolerate it. But I really like walking meditations or like moving meditations where it's kind of guided like that, or finding things in my life that can be meditative. Like, one of them for me is yard work or mowing the yard, to where it's like everything else kind of gets pushed out and I'm just focused on that activity. And so it's like mindfulness is key, but it also has to involve like some movement. And it's taken me a long time to overcome the like judgment and criticism of that
Mhm.
because it doesn't look like traditional just sit crisscross applesauce with like your hands on your knees and
Right.
breathe or chant or something like that. And like I have tried those and I can't sustain it, but I can do really good if it involves some type of movement physical activity. And those are kind of my two, like how I put those two things together. And it was really interesting that both of those things kind of showed up in mine, that like this is a key, but like
Yeah.
also it's a struggle. And like that feels like most of my life of like, this is a thing that you need, but it's gonna suck. Like, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
hard. And so I found that really interesting for me.
Yeah. As much as like there's a part of me that would love to go over each and every part of it, it again would be an impossible task. And maybe on a future episode or an afterthoughts, we could go over one of our charts or somebody else's chart
Hmm.
that wants to go over this so that we can expand on it, because it's just to get through the summary of all this, which has been cumbersome at times. It is it's just really difficult if you don't have all this information out front. I think that that will be a great future episode for us, is
Hmm.
to use this information and maybe bring on some people to go over this with. Once we get through all the different signs and everything like that, the book ends with what she calls the 13th sign. And this is apparently what she describes as the most important topic, and she describes the 13th sign as a flimsy, nonlinear concept that accesses the quiet zone, the silent cave, the perfectly colored sunset where everything is at peace, at one, untarnished. Call it home base, where your ego comes to rest and you stop the efforting. You just are. This has been called by many names in many cultures throughout human history. In ancient China, they call it the Tao. In India, they call it Atman. In the
Hmm.
Jewish Kabbalism, they call it Ein Sof. And in Buddhism, they call it Nirvana. All these words describe something that cannot be described. We are heading toward the realm of the ineffable where words fail.
Hmm.
And this is definitely where I will say this chapter was the one where I was like, I get it, but I don't. However, what I did get out of this was talking about how right now we are in a major time in our lifetime as human beings, where according to the different eras, we have entered the Aquarian age.
Hmm.
And what's really interesting is that apparently in summer of 2026, our outer planets are going to enter fire and air signs. And
Hmm.
the last 15 years, apparently, were all earth and water signs, which really talks about a time of business as usual, staying the course, the old boys club, the governments who pretend to have our backs, all in an attempt to create stability and consistency. But with them moving into fire and air starting in 2026, we will have Saturn in Aries, which is a fire sign, Uranus in Gemini, which is an air sign, Neptune in Aries, another fire sign, and Pluto in Aquarius, which is air. And this is a huge shift because fire and air contain combustive energetics that have fueled change and newness. Now, Pluto is changing signs and has the potential to change our world beyond recognition like it does every 240 years. And I
Hmm.
heard all about this recently. Like last year, I actually heard it right before the election, and I
Hmm.
shared it with a bunch of people. And so I was really hopeful for a different outcome, but I think it makes more sense the more I think about it, because as she says in the book, the last time that Pluto changed signs was in 1777.
Hmm.
America had just become a country. And think about the implications for our world. Pluto now enters the sign that represents astrology and all things futuristic. Hello, Aquarius.
Hmm. This is
So,
one of my
yeah,
things that like I find really interesting, and I always do take them with a grain of salt, and so I
yeah,
just want to put that out there. Of
sure.
lately, I've been coming across like TikToks on my feed, because every now and then the algorithm will give me astrology related stuff, and it's just kind of like talking about all the different things in history that were happening when like this planet was in this sign and like this planet was in this sign, or these two planets were together, and I can't remember right now what they were off the top of my head, but it was like when these two planets were together, the French Revolution was happening and World War II was happening. And then when this was in retrograde, there was another really big conflict. And like we're coming into a time where all of those things are about to be happening astrologically again. And it's just these times where, like, not just for America and the creation of this country, but worldwide, there were these massive,
Civilization.
yeah, like where civilizations were going through massive upheaval and conflict, and like also rebirth comes
Yeah.
out of that. I think it's going to be an interesting time. It can also be really scary to think about and acknowledge that. it's not like a guarantee that this is going to happen,
Right.
but it's just kind of like historically when these things have lined up, really big things have happened that
Yeah.
were both painful, but like led to new beginnings as
Yeah.
well.
Well, I mean,
So,
if you think about it, I don't know about you, Asher, but the last year has felt like a bunch of hot air,
mhm,
fire and air. And it feels like we are closer and closer to this boiling point that honestly scares the shit out of me. And
me too.
I think that that's why when I read that, I'm like, well, I mean, it makes complete sense if this is where things go really insane and maybe again like you were saying will lead to big change if we do it right, but
Mhm.
it takes all of us to stay focused on what we're here for, to do that a service, to make sure that we don't land in misery or that we don't go through this and learn nothing from it.
Yeah, and I think that's the one big thing about it that concerns me is like we're potentially going to encounter all of these big shifts, but are we willing to do self reflection? Not really so much individually, but more collectively
Yeah.
at like how we got here to be able to create something that is sustainable for all of us and that does work more for all of us.
Yeah.
And then also, I carry a really big fear of how much carnage is it going to take for us to get there? And not to get macabre or whatever, but it's just a genuine concern that I have of like,
Fair.
I do think something new and different is coming. But
Yeah.
I do spend more time maybe than is healthy. How much bad are we going to have to navigate? How much damage is going to get done for us to actually get to a point where we realize like we have to have some very different conversations and we need some very different structures and systems
And that's
for
not gonna get
for the
better.
collective. Like I think those are happening. I know they happen in my life a lot on individual and like small group levels where we're trying and like we're chipping away within our own like circles, but that can sometimes feel really like you're swimming upstream
Yeah.
when there are these like bigger power systems in place, and it's scary. Like,
Yeah.
and there's not really any other way to say it.
Yeah. Like, I'm excited about the prospect of what could happen if all these shifts and uprisings occur, but also I know that typically doesn't come without some major pain and
Mhm.
major darkness. But at the same time, I would say if you're paying attention and you care about humans, right now feels like that already.
It
Like
does.
maybe we're functioning, quote unquote, we're going to work, we're doing all the things. But guess what? If you're in other countries right now, you're living in warfare, or
Mhm.
you don't have rights in certain ways, or you're living in certain places right now in this country of the United States where there are rights that are either have been taken or are on the docket to be
Mhm.
taken or to be abused or whatever. And I just think we're hitting that point where I don't think there's any going back. It's like we either will fall or we will rise, and
Mhm.
it's up to us as a collective to make that happen.
Yep, I agree.
So, anyway, the book was great.
The book was great. Like,
I will say overall, Asher, would you say you were happy that you took the time to read this book, and do you feel like you got things out of this that you're gonna be able to apply to your work with clients?
I would, yeah, I actually talked about it with a client today. I haven't looked at it yet, but, like, they sent me, like, their chart, and I think it's a tool, like, for people that are just willing to explore, and I've said that multiple times today. Using it as, like, "Hey, this is kind of what this says about you." It's not like we didn't chisel it into stone,
Yeah.
and it's like, what parts of it, like, actually resonate with you? Like, do you feel like it lines up? And that's kind of the approach that I take with any non-traditional, like, mode that I bring into the therapy space of, like,
Yeah.
does it resonate? Does it not? And if it does, then how? Like, and let's talk about it. And what do you want it to look like? And how do you see these things showing up in your life
Yeah.
and things like that. And then if it doesn't, it's like, okay, cool. Let's move on to the next thing. Like,
Right.
we don't have to get bogged down of like, no, we have to figure out how astrology like shows up in your life and things like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
It's
I liked it. I definitely think I need to do like a reread.
yeah.
Like, just because there's so much and I'm certain, like, maybe I need to listen to it if I can find it in an
Yeah.
audiobook format because I can sometimes be a more auditory learner, but I wanted to be able to make notes and underline stuff, and so it was good. But, yeah, I think it's
Mhm.
gonna take at least 1, maybe 2 more read-throughs for me to figure out how those puzzle pieces start to fit together from my
Yeah.
personal life. And I'm not espousing to be an astrological expert in the therapy space by any means.
Yeah,
So
absolutely same. Yeah. I was super curious what this would be like to use with a client. And so one of my clients that I know was already very open to all this astrology stuff anyway. I asked them before our session if they would mind give me their basic information so I could look up their chart. And so when we met that next day, it was really cool to see all of the connections they were gathering from the information I was able to share with them, and they were really excited and basically said, I hope we continue to go over this. And I was like,
mhm,
hell yeah, like let's do it. So it's definitely emphasis on it is a tool. It is
mhm.
something that it can't just fully replace all the other stuff that we do in our work, but it's another area of relation and also of maybe wisdom that hits a certain point of view that our clients can maybe see themselves more clearly in. I'm glad also that we got to read it. I'm grateful that you were down to reading it. So thanks,
Yeah.
Sashi.
I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like I was like, I need a deadline.
Honestly, I did too. Honestly, I did too. So
Because
we
I'm like, I'm
yeah.
really glad that we recorded this because like this would have just ended up as another book that's like partially read on my coffee table,
Yeah.
where I was like, this was cute and fun, but and then
Yeah.
I may or may not finish it ever.
Correct. But we
So
got it done. That's what's most important.
we did.
All right, to
So
wrap this up, how about shout outs? Do you have any shout outs
ooh.
for what's going on with you or just things that bring you joy or you want to express gratitude for?
Um, I do have like a pretty big one. I don't want to go into like too much about like what's going on, but I feel like the collective group as a whole has really been there for me as I've navigated like some hard life stuff. And so just the five of you have kind of rallied around me as I try to kind of come to terms and to like a new normal and
Hmm.
some things that are going on in my life. And I've been really appreciative of that all the way from like, I don't know, y'all got me some plants that I have to try to keep alive now, and which is not a strong suit of mine, all the way to just
Thanks
like
always.
the right, yeah. If anyone would have known that that was not what I needed, it should have been her. Um, but like, but all the way to just like texts or being willing to hang out and just kind of checking on me and giving me a hug because that's like and being open to that
Yeah.
because I'm usually like I don't want hugs ever. But except in very specific situations, but
Yeah.
just the like kindness and comfort and compassion through this like kind of phase of my life. I've been really appreciative for the five of you.
Mm,
And then some of my other friends that have also shown up during this time too. But
yeah. Well, we're happy
what
to
about
do that. We're definitely, we're family and that's what we do for each other, right?
Mhm.
Ohana means family. Is that what that is that the lyric? Is that the quote? That just like
That
came
would have
out of
been
me.
beautiful if you hadn't said it like, "Ohana means family."
Guys, this is part of I think my Gemini rising where I am a little playful and silly about
Mhm.
things comes out. But anyway, sorry.
It does mean
Um
family and never having to be alone.
that's right. That's right. I
Yes.
was that made famous by some film or movie or anyway, I'm
Mm,
sorry. We're not
do
gonna
you
do
not
this.
know? Like, do you
Of
really
course
not
I know
know?
Lilo and Stitch. Are you kidding me? Oh my
Okay, I
god.
was just asking. Oh my god.
I know I was just being dramatic because I'm a Leo. Um
My
so
bad.
anyway.
And I was
My
just being literal because autism, which
getting
is
your
not
feels cancer.
which is not part of this book.
Oh, so my shout out is I actually there was a lot of things. I first want to say I feel gratitude for the fact that I actually had to sit and really think like, what am I going to shout out? Because if I could really do a list, I have a lot of things I feel a lot of gratitude for. So I'm grateful for that gratitude. But if I had to pinpoint one, the thing that has given me the most joy that I desperately need right now and nobody who has listened to this podcast will be surprised, is that Taylor Swift announced her 12th album, The Life of a
That was great.
Showgirl.
Mhm.
And it's coming out on October 3rd. And I'm so excited. And it's going to be a bop. And I think we need that so badly right now.
Mhm.
And also, she's reclaimed the color orange. And I used to have a very neutral relationship with the color orange. And then for, I think, a lot of reasons, a certain person who shall not be named is as orange as nasty as fuck. And I can't get started on this. This is where my fire sign's like, "Wah!" um,
Mhm.
but I feel like this is a great way for her to be like, this is coming back to the good side. So anyway, I'm just excited for new music from my favorite artists. And I'm so grateful that she's feeling so generous with her gifts that she just keeps on churning out stuff. And how fortunate to get that. That is October 3rd. So,
Mhm. And
which,
she just
yeah.
constantly makes me wonder what I'm doing with my life because, like, she put out, like, 2 full-length albums, one of which was kind of a double album,
Yeah. Oh, it totally
while
was.
while also, like, the biggest tour in history,
Yeah.
and I'm just over here like, "I made myself breakfast today."
Oh,
Like
for sure. To wrap this up, I also wanted to share that we are going on a little fall break, so to speak. We're going to be
Mhm.
taking some time off, but we are not leaving you in a lurch because we will be turning out some special little things for our listeners and watchers to enjoy that hopefully will be a new thing for our podcast that everybody can utilize in some way and will hopefully appreciate while we're cooking up new episodes. And we will return on Tuesday, October 7th. So fear not, we will still have some content coming out. It just won't be full episodes at the moment, but we will be back. We just, need a little time to enjoy fall and, the temperature's not burning my face off. So and sweating
We're
like
there. We're almost there.
we're almost there, thank God. Last but not least, I always like to make sure that I shout out if you would like to know more about us, you can go to benvillecounseling.com where we have all of our information and profiles. We have our Instagram, which is at Bentonville Counseling, and we also have our TikTok at Collect Your Thoughts. And I just want to say thanks, Asher, for doing this deep dive with me and for just, yeah, being a great partner in silliness and knowledge.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun. I really did enjoy
Yeah.
this book, and
Yeah. And
now
yeah.
be fun to, like, see how it shows up in session, and then you and I can talk about that.
Amen. I like it. I
Yeah.
like it a lot.
So,
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
I like it a lot. All right, everybody. So, when in doubt, remember to look up at the stars. They might give you some insight. Take a deep breath.
And collect your thoughts.
That's right. We'll see you guys next time. See you later.
Bye.